Hello, and welcome to the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. I'm Dan, your host. You can find me on Instagram at FJ40_UMA_Smurf or on I Hate Mud at Mountain Biker. You can find the podcast on Instagram by searching Classic Land Cruisers. Remember to go to reefmonkey.com to get your Classic Land Cruiser podcast merch. Bring your adventure home with inlowgear.com, your source for custom Land Cruiser apparel and merchandise, where adventure becomes art, designed for the road. This episode was brought to you in part by Redline Land Cruisers, Save Your F, by Manafree, your one-stop shop for Land Cruiser parts and service, by Valley Hybrids and Terrain Tamer North America. Okay, welcome to this episode of the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. With me today is Jonah Waldman, and I can't remember how I got in touch with you, but I think somebody was like, "Hey, you should have Jonah Waldman on your podcast." And in our private conversations, you've mentioned that you're kind of a dinosaur living in a digital age, and I think that kind of goes the same for all of us cruiser heads, especially the older cruisers, is that we prefer to be dinosaurs in a digital age. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more and how you got into old Land Cruisers?
You mentioned my name, one and only. Nothing special here. Again, yes, dinosaur living in the digital world, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like driving my analog FJ62. Is it's got, it's an FJ62, so it has some bells and whistles, but not a whole lot, and not a whole lot of technology, computerized, battery operated, whatever.
It has a lot more than.
And for me being,
Your 62 has a lot more bells and whistles than my 40 series has.
and that's one of the reasons why I got it. But I guess to answer your question, how I got into Land Cruisers, I have to thank my mom and dad for being sort of outdoorsy people. They enjoyed camping. They took us camping. They used to have, when I was a baby, some of my first core memories are of running around, going to the beach in my mom and dad's Volkswagen buses, and then of course camping trips. And then they graduated out of the hippie-ish, and they weren't hippies. They worked. They had businesses, but for all intents and purposes, they had long hair, and they did sort of hippie things. Anyway, they had the foresight of moving our family from Los Angeles area, San Fernando Valley, to a little valley up north of Santa Barbara called Santa Ynez Valley. And so we moved when I was in my 7th grade year, which is about the same age my son is now, to Santa Ynez Valley, to a little town called Los Olivos, which is small town America, Mayberry. If you've ever seen that, whatever movie that was featured in, they use the town of Los Olivos as Mayberry. So idyllic little place. And so we went from riding bikes around the San Fernando Valley in the washes and causing trouble as teenagers to a little small town where everybody knew everybody's business. And anyway, their foresight, man, I mean, I don't know what I would have turned out as had I lived and grown up in Los Angeles compared to small town San Ynez. But my bicycle commute to school, to Los Olivos Elementary, was up this little hill, and on the left-hand side, as I was going up the hill toward Los Olivos, there was like a 78-ish, 76-ish Toyota FJ55.
Nice.
And I always thought that thing was just super cool. And it didn't hurt that the girl's family who owned it was super cute. But, and fast forward, we became good friends, and they got rid of the Land Cruiser. And I always was sort of like, I love that truck. That thing just looks like a Tonka toy, something that I used to play with, on the sands of the beach when my parents would take me camping. And I have not owned a 55. But fast forward a number of years, after moving out of the San Ynez Valley and going to college and traveling a little bit around the world and surfing and seeing Land Cruisers in Australia when I was down there.
Yeah.
I lived down there for about 6 months, and then I moved to New Zealand for another 6 months. But the Land Cruisers in Australia were awesome. And this was in, I want to say, early 2000 when I was down there. So some of the 60 series were still rolling around, and they're being used as, beach cruisers, and they were badass. And so when I got back to the States, I got into the wine business because that's what you did in the small valley where I was from. When we moved there, there was like one stoplight, a lot of cattle ranches, but then vineyards were being put in. And so I was studying geology, and I was working in a restaurant, and I met this guy who drove up in an 80 series, like a 94 green 80 series Land Cruiser, long red hair. And I'm pouring him a glass of wine for lunch. I'm like, nice, you're having a glass of wine for lunch? He's like, yeah, I just finished bottling and da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, oh, you work in the wineries? He's like, yeah. He's like, how much do you know about wine? I'm like, well, I worked in New Zealand at a winery as just a grunt, cellar rat. But why? He's like, well, dude, I'm looking for a cellar rat. Do you have any interest in working? And I'm like, yeah. So anyway, so this is kind of how I got into Land Cruisers. Like that old 55, Ariel's FJ80, FZJ80. And then there was a guy that used to consult at the winery that I was working at, named John Kerr. John has since passed. He was a Vietnam veteran, but he had a badass gray spring over axle FJ62 with bumpers and winch. And I mean, the thing was just kitted out. And anyway, I mentioned he was a Vietnam vet. He would come and consult, and we would go bopping around in his truck in the vineyard, and it was perfect for it. And so I found, I want to say on Craigslist, an 85 tan FJ60 with the 2F carbureted 4-speed, and I got it for a song. And I wasn't really planning on buying a truck, but I needed something. I had an old Ford Ranger that I used to work out of, and it was tired. It had like close to 400,000 miles on it, second motor, second tranny, third clutch, that whole thing. It was time for me to get a bigger vehicle because I was towing a boat up and over Gaviota Pass in a 4-cylinder 5-speed Ford Ranger, and it just wasn't working. So I, in my divine wisdom, a Land Cruiser will work. It'll be great. And not so much. Towing my boat up and over Gaviota Pass to launch at Hollister Ranch at Gaviota, it was a slow process and a little sketchy trying to slow it down sometimes, but it worked. But then I made that thing my vineyard vehicle, and I was working as a vineyard for a vineyard management company. Gosh, this is all 100 years ago, it seems like. Well, it was almost 20 years ago now, but I used that 60 daily. But then the problem became, I was living in California, and so smogging that thing in California was a chore every time it would come up.
Yeah.
And so I decided, through one thing or another, I had to sell it. And I put it on, Craigslist. I put it in the Auto Trader, and I got some nibbles, but I was trying to get, basically what I paid for it. And it was a stock, beautiful FJ60. I think it had like 180,000 miles when I got rid of it. Anyway, I needed to get something else. I got another truck, and I sold it to this guy who had a barn full of cruisers in San Ynez Valley in Buellton. I think his name was Bob Cash. So if anybody out there knows of or heard of Bob Cash in San Ynez with a bunch of Land Cruisers, I'm still looking for that tan one. I wouldn't mind at least hearing what happened to it. But I guess if I could get it for what I paid for it back then, I might. But anyway, so John Kerr at that time, he became sort of a mentor of mine. and taught me. And if it wasn't for him and a number of other really wonderful, intelligent people, I wouldn't have gotten into the wine industry and gotten my edification through those guys. But John, he, in Santa Barbara County, it's probably one of the most idyllic places in the world. And there was, as the crow flies from my house, I was 15 minutes, or I'm sorry, 15 miles from the beach where I like to go surfing. And I could take the Gaviota Pass on the 101 and go all the way around, or I could just take the back road up and over the mountain. And the coastal range is beautiful. And so, you cross these creek crossings and go up into by Reagan's Ranch and up by Broadcast Peak and come back down the mountain on Refugio Road, and then go to Refugio or El Capitan Beach and go surf. And man, I did that for years. And I used that truck to go to Hollister Ranch, to go surf the gated community private coastline on California and launch my boat. And then I took that old 60 down to Baja on a couple of trips and bebop down and around Baja. As a matter of fact, towed my boat to Ensenada one time, and surfed at Todos Santos, the island off of Ensenada, Isla Natividad. And it was just, man, that truck was great. I made a lot of memories, had a lot of great camping trips with John. And John was the type of guy that you get him around a campfire and away from work and away from the stresses of life. And that's where that guy just became a genuine human being. And his knowledge in the wine business and in just four-wheeling and running cruisers was really instrumental in how I got into them. And sadly, unfortunately, after I'd moved, I found out that he passed. And so, but I mean, hats off to him, and Ariel, and just the business in the area that I lived. People had some cool cars, and cruisers were part of them. My parents had numerous Toyotas over the years when I was growing up. I remember, I think the first new car my parents bought was a Toyota van, with you sat on top of the motor, and my mom would drive that thing, I don't know, to Santa Monica from the valley, and some, yellow van. My dad had numerous Toyota pickups. Matter of fact, golly day. So my dad ran a pool business. So he was always carrying around pool equipment in the back of his Toyotas.
Yeah.
And they bought this old boat, and I grew up water skiing, wakeboarding, camping. They bought this old boat that the boat was bigger than the truck. And then they'd load us kids in the back of the pickup in a camper shell, and we'd drive out to the Colorado River in the desert, and it would be, 110 degrees in the back of the truck. And Dad's towing the huge boat with no trailer brakes. And I just kind of wonder how I've survived and made it, hydrated on hose water and, I don't know, just love and a prayer, I guess. But that's kind of how I got into Toyotas and Land Cruisers. I mean, and so to speak to my dad, he was always wrenching on trucks. When I got old enough and I couldn't afford good cars, because you can't when you're working your first few jobs at minimum wage.
Oh, yeah.
Dad was always helping me wrench on my truck. My brother had some cool cars, but his brother, my dad was of four boys. His brother, my Uncle Harvey, the guy, I guess, how do I put this? He was the most loving, kind, just gregarious, huge human being, huge heart, huge guy, big guy. I guess when my dad was running around like I was running around in my 20s, his Volkswagen bus blew up. And my dad called Harvey, and Harvey grabbed the motor from somewhere, loaded it in his old pickup, drove out to meet him, and they changed the Volkswagen bus motor on the side of the road. And I guess the legend is Uncle Harvey single-handedly lifted the motor and put it into the Volkswagen.
Oh, geez.
And so this guy, when we would go to his house growing up, he always had cool arcade games in the garage. And he was always wrenching on this old, oh my gosh, what was that thing? A Chevy C10, I think. '66, but it was like a parts truck. I don't even know, man. It was like a transform. It had like the body off of a '70 and the cab off a '66 and the hood and the front end from a '69. And then he did something to the motor, and it was always just this project. But everybody had to move. That truck was the truck that he loaned out. Didn't matter if he dented it. Didn't matter if, whatever. It was just, that was his truck. But then he also had a '55 Bel Air in his garage, and for 20 years he was rebuilding that thing, and he finally sold it for like six figures. But I guess this guy, he was like borderline dyslexic, could barely read, but man, from across the garage, the guy could name, that's a 3/4, and you just know what bolt size it was. Get me this socket, and oh, it's right there, and he knew exactly where everything was. And so, coming up working on cars and stuff with them, was taught real quick that, clean your tools that you're using if you're borrowing something, and put them back where you found them. My dad was such a stickler for that. And so now when I'm working on my trucks in the garage, I'm not the most organized, but I know where my stuff is.
Yeah. So
although age is happening, and so I'll forget sometimes where I put stuff when it's right below my nose,
Yeah. So did your Uncle Harvey happen to work with Johnny Cash in the auto manufacturing plant, where he took one piece at a time?
It's pretty much like Johnny Cash's song, for sure. Yeah, that song, when that song comes on, I think of him, for sure. That's a great reference, and I forgot about that. No, he was a great guy. Land Cruisers are, one of the reasons why I bought my Land Cruiser this time around was sort of like maybe midlife crisis, or I don't know. I had missed my old one, and I missed sort of the guy that I was in a way when I had that one. Maybe not missed. I don't know how to put it, but I missed having the Land Cruiser. I remember that old truck and just remembering like the hopes and dreams and the things, the mods that I wanted to do to it, and finances and things happened that just didn't allow me to at that point in time in my life. That, and living in California, having two vehicles and a boat and owning a house, I was making good money, but it always was gone because of the mortgage and, just living in California. So, anywho, I don't work in the wine industry anymore. I don't drink anymore. I was working for a local cable company, not local, they're pretty big time, and I don't, no names, but I was working for them for the last 7 years, contributing to the 401k, and buying the employee stock purchase program stocks, and just sort of living on the cheap here in Pennsylvania. And I bought my house in 2020, and I was sort of set up. I was, like pretty comfortable. I had a fun little car I was running around in, and I started doing Uber because I needed a little extra money, and I wanted to get some more projects going, and I have a 100-year-old house that needs love, drastically. It needs love. So I was like, okay, I'll work Uber part-time after work when my son's with his mom, and that way I'm not just stuck at home and going out to the bars or whatever, wasting money. I'm making money. And I did that for a couple of years, bought a house, and then I did that for a couple more years. And with the stocks and everything, I had an amount of money that I was sort of comfortable spending. And I was looking in Facebook Marketplace, I think it was, and an LX, I want to say no, it might have been an LX 450 or 460 or whatever they are. One came for sale, and the guy had it just fully overlanded, kitted out, had a trailer, had a camper, had a kitchen, had a bathroom, a shower. I was like, dude, that thing, that's the surf mobile. Holy crap. I can see. Okay. So I called the guy, and we started talking, and he was wanting, X amount of dollars for this rig. and it had like 380 some odd thousand miles, and it had been up to the Arctic Circle, and it had done Moab, and it had done all these things, and I'm like, that thing is just bad. But we couldn't quite come together on a price, and I didn't know if I really wanted the trailer, and so we didn't agree. And he's like, if it doesn't sell here in the next month, I'm gonna just list it on Bring a Trailer. And that was maybe not the first time, but one of the first times I'd kind of really heard about Bring a Trailer. And so I was like, well, what's this Bring a Trailer all about? And I looked in and I logged in and I joined, and I was looking at cars, and I was sort of testing the waters, um, you know, commenting on cars and looking at things and just sort of feeling it out. And then I was working on my Subaru that I had at the time. I think I was doing a brake job on the Subaru on my day off.
Yeah.
And I was logged into Bring a Trailer, and I saw a 62. And I think at that point in time, it was like 11 grand. I'm like, oh, that thing looks pretty sick. And that's right around my price point. Boom, I bid. Didn't think anything of it. And then I get an email. Oh, you've been outbid. And I looked up. I'm like, oh, I'll bid one more time. What the heck? These auctions usually somebody swoops in at the last second, or, there'll be a bidding war in the last 2 minutes, and it keeps the thing going. I'm like, oh, I'll throw a bid in. And I didn't really, honestly, I'm so willy-nilly, but things work out for a reason in my life, and have for me. But, that price that I set, that was what I was comfortable spending on a vehicle. I didn't know what it was. And that 62 came up. I put the price in. I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm done. I went back to work on my Subaru, went inside to wash my hands, drink some water, and I logged back in on my phone, and I got an email. You're the winning bidder. And I'm like, oh crap. I just won an auction. And I was like, full of, I don't know even how to put it. Like, I wasn't happy. I was shocked. I was scared. I'm like, oh, what do I do now? I don't have this amount of money in my account. I can't just write the guy a check. Like, where is this thing from anyway? And so it turns out this guy, Tom, he contacted me. He's like, all right, so you look like you won the auction. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I want it because I don't want to lose my auction fee, because 5% of what I paid is not, it's not a walk in the park. I'm not made of that kind of money. And so I was like, well, where are you? You're in Durango? Okay, Durango, right? And I looked into shipping it, and I'm like, screw that. I'm going to drive this thing across the country. The last time I drove across the country, I was in a hurry to move to Pittsburgh because I had found out the reason why I moved here was for a lady. And I didn't really have a chance to enjoy my drive across the country after selling businesses and liquidating property and getting rid of my old Toyota and trying to move everything that I owned from Idaho and California to here. Anyway, so this time around, I'm like, all right, I called my boss. I'm like, hey, I need, these days off. Cool. I got paid time off. This will be like a paid vacation. This will be sweet. I called my brother, and my brother's like, you idiot. What are you thinking? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm going to pick up a Land Cruiser, and it's been since 2008 since I owned my last one. It's time. I need another Land Cruiser in my life. And he's like, you're nuts. Meanwhile, he's got a hot rod in his garage that he's tinkering on. I think it's a 66 Nova. And, I love driving that thing around with him, and just the looks that you get and the stares and this and that. And so I got on my Fidelity account, and I'm looking at the stocks. I'm like, well, it looks like it's a pretty decent time to sell. And so I just sold a bunch of stocks, and then it had to sit and transfer to my bank account. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, dude, I'm going to get scammed. I'm going to get scammed out of like a chunk of my life savings. I'm like, all right, Tom, what's your bank account number? And like 3 times triple checked it and sent it off. And he's like, well, it's still not there. And I'm like, So I call the bank, and it's, instant wire transfer, and it took it 24 hours, and finally it was there. So he got the money, and he's like, all right, well, the thing's yours. It's sitting in the driveway for whenever you can come get it. And I'm like, well, how long can you store it for? I got to get a flight and this and that. So I got a flight. the day comes between our schedules. Tom is an old ski bum. Lives in Durango, Colorado. He works for one of the airline companies, Delta, I think. And it was his wife's dad's car.
Oh man.
They were the second owner, one family, of this Land Cruiser. It was a stock vehicle. The old man bought it brand new from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it lived most of its life in Albuquerque, and then I think when he passed on, his daughter took it on. When the guy sent me his address, I was thinking, oh, I'll just Uber from the airport to your house. He's like, oh, dude, I'll pick you up. It's fine. I'm like, oh, okay. So I get to the airport, and the day I'm supposed to fly. Well, first, oh man, that was a whole other stress point. But I bought my ticket, and then I picked the wrong date. I picked like a month in advance, thinking, "Oh, that's a good Monday. That'll work." And then and I'm like, "Wait, why is my flight not showing up?" So then I had to change my flight date, change the flight date, made sure it worked with Tom. Got to the airport, get on the plane, get through security, all the things, and there is a mechanical malfunction on the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be on the tarmac for a little while. Blah, 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 blah. And so for an hour goes by. I'm like, well, my connecting flight in Denver, I'm going to miss. So I'm screwed. And so I get off the flight. I call Delta. I call Tom. I'm like, dude, I don't know I can't get out of here today. Weather, mechanicals, whatever. Meanwhile, this is in December of 2024. And so I'm like, let me see about getting another flight. He's like, well, when? Because I have to work, and if you come a certain day, I got to go down here, and I got all these things to do, and I won't be able to be there to do paperwork and talk about the truck with you. I'm like, when will you be there? I need you to be there. I'm like, okay. So I reschedule the flight, fly out, land in Durango. It's beautiful, clear blue skies. I'm coming from gray, cold, dreary winter, high humidity Pittsburgh to bluebird, beautiful early winter day, high altitude, dry air. I'm like, yes, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. However I planned it or could have planned it, this is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And so Tomo picks me up. We drive over to his house, which is like 15 minutes from the airport. And there she is. She's sitting in his driveway, hasn't moved. Same miles that were on the ad, same miles on the odometer. I'm walking around it going, oh man, she's a little rougher around the edges than I thought she was. Oh man, what did I do? And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to drive this thing across the country. How old are the tires? He's like, yeah, they're you could use some new ones. They're dry rotted. And so I'm like, well, what's my first order of operations here? So we pop the hood and we fire it up, and it's running perfect. It's running beautifully. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, dude, be honest here. Do I take this thing to the tire shop and do I go and get it, baseline somewhere, or what do I do? He's like, dude, I just drive it. I'm like, all right, I'll trust your judgment. And I'm the type of guy that I'm like, just drive it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Life works out in your favor. What could go wrong? And so I get on the road. I think the first thing I did was gas it up, check the oil. I checked it before I left, and it needed an oil change. But I'm like, it's only been 1,000 miles since its last oil change. I think let's just drive it. Send it, man. Just send it. That's the surfing world. Like, just go. And and so I drive it, and I stopped in Durango somewhere. I think probably where the same shopping center where somebody had a cart roll into the side of the door and dented the door. It was the guy who told me a story about it. The thing came with all of its old records, handwritten from the old owner, the old original Toyota, from the dealership. The what do you call it? The service records and all the stuff, and just so I spent a day eating lunch at a taco shop in Denver or in Durango. And I'm like, right, well, where are we going? It's been a long time since I've been through Colorado, and this is a lovely state. I've got a few days off. I don't have to be back in Pittsburgh for 7 days. Let's go and check out some hot springs. And so I drove it on back roads. I figured, one of the best ways to test out a truck is throw it into 4-wheel drive and see how she drives.
Yeah.
And get her onto some trails. And it's funny because that thing cruising around town at altitude, it was slow, which is what's, nothing to be surprised about there. 155 screaming horsepower. But she was good. She was good. Fine. No rattles, no squeaks, no real weird vibrations. No, just temperature was not getting warm, but it was also, 20 degrees. So I went to a hot spring. I chased some dirt roads and just like, well, there's a dirt road. Let's go see where that one leads. And just, kind of got the thing dirty and felt it out and kind of felt what it was like driving a Land Cruiser again. And, my old one was a stick. I miss having a stick, but I don't, especially with the hills in Pittsburgh. And I think, honestly, off-road, for me, I like the control and the ease of having an automatic. Whereas when I'm riding, racing around on a street course or something, it's nice to have a stick because you can control it better.
Yeah.
But again, no anti-lock brakes on this thing. 0 to 60 when it feels like it. Eventually she'll get there. And especially at altitude. But I'm getting them going, and I'm surprised. I'm like, damn, this thing's getting like 14 miles to the gallon on the highway.
Nice.
That's great. Well, what I didn't realize was the tires were the stock small size tires, and so when the speedometer says I'm going 70, I'm actually going like 60. What time? I think it was like 6 miles an hour off. I think I was going like 64 according to the GPS when the speedometer is spinning at 70. And I'm like, well, no wonder I'm getting such good gas mileage. It's off by, however many miles per hour. Anyway, I got it up and over Wolf Creek Pass, and I drove through Pagosa Hot Springs and checked out some places. And I'm like, all right, well, it's time to send it. Kansas is, can be kind of boring. I'm just going to hightail it through Kansas. And so I had like an 8-hour drive to where my next stop was planned. And it was getting late after I dilly-dallied and was chasing dirt roads and whatever. This is like the second or third day I was out. And I'm like, okay, high-speed burn through Kansas. Let's get to where you have some family or whatever. Because on the trip, I called all my family like, hey, do you mind if I, pop in and stay with you? Or, hey, do you got a couch I can serve for just a night while I'm driving this Land Cruiser back so I don't have to sleep in the back of it and save some money from, anyway. But I booked a hotel somewhere in Kansas that was like 8 hours away. So I'm driving through Colorado, get into Kansas, sun goes down. And I'm like, all right, I'm not quite ready to get gas yet. I'm not really hungry yet. Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? And I finally I see this diner. I'm like, boop, right next to a gas station. Perfect. Stop. And this young, real vivacious redhead was like, hey, can I take your order? And I'm like, hey, I was just thinking the salad bar. You guys have all this fried food. I don't want fried food. I want some sort of salad bar. She's like, so we were just closing it up. I'm like, do you mind if I grab it? She's like, yeah, go ahead. So she was real nice. Eat my dinner, and it was so funny because when I walked in, it was almost like everybody at the restaurant, at least it felt this way to me, everybody at the restaurant stopped and stared and like, yep, out of towner, like traveler, like just like if there was a jukebox playing, the record would have skipped a beat. In walks this straggly surfer guy with a beard and in a funky Land Cruiser. And they're all plainly farmers getting together, talking, whatever they're talking. And they were friendly. They were nice. It was nothing, no big deal. But, anyway, so I get back on the road. My brother calls me. So how's it going? And I'm like, oh, it's going great. This thing's awesome. I just checked the oil. It's not using any coolant. She's running great. I'm stoked. I'm going to do like 6 hours until I got to get to this hotel, and I'm going to crash. And I'm going to, try to put some miles down tomorrow and end of Kansas and go see a friend in Missouri or something. Anyway, so as I'm talking to him, meanwhile it's 12 degrees outside, according to the last bank that I had passed in the last town, and I've been driving for 45 minutes, an hour, and all of a sudden the heater, it starts getting cold, in the Land Cruiser, and I'm on the phone with the phone to my ear trying to hear my brother because I don't have. Again, I mentioned I'm a dinosaur living in the digital world, and this truck doesn't have Bluetooth or anything. And the heat, it starts getting cold in there. I'm like, dude, hold on, I lost my heat. And I look at the temperature gauge. I'm like, oh, the temperature gauge is spiking. I gotta go. So I shut off the truck. At this point, I'm on Interstate 40, which is a 2-lane road in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so I coast. I'm coasting. I don't want to like run the truck and overheat this new truck I just got and blow up the motor. So I'm coasting. It gets down to about 15 miles an hour, and I crank it over, and the temp had come down a little bit in that time, but then it immediately starts going back up, and I'm like, all right, I get it up to speed, and I shut it off, and I'm coasting, and I coast up on a driveway with some mailboxes, and meanwhile, it's pitch black outside, and I'm like, okay. So I circle around real quick, because I missed the driveway, turn it back on, circle around real quick through the I don't know, the shoulder, back onto the driveway in front of the mailboxes, shut off the truck, pop the hood, and it's just spewing steam out the front. I'm like, okay, what did I do? Did I blow a head gasket? Like, what am I working on here? And I'm working with an iPhone flashlight. I didn't buy any coolant because I was like, this thing's fine. It'll be fine. I don't need coolant. I had a quart of oil, which, in case she was using oil. Anyway, popping the hood, I'm looking around trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm thinking it's a hose, and it was for sure a hose. And I'm like, meanwhile, a big rig truck drives by, and I'm like, hey, stop, can you help me out? Something, you got any water? Nothing. The guy just like, forget you, dude. Middle of nowhere, Kansas. I ain't stopping for you, you freak, and so I'm like, and I think before the trip, I insured the truck, and I made sure I got roadside assistance. And I'm like, all right, if something happens, at least I got roadside assistance. So I'm trying to call roadside assistance, and it's like, I don't know, 9:30 at this point at night, and they ring, nothing. Finally, they answer, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not going to be able to have anybody out there until tomorrow morning." And I'm like, "Okay." So I start looking around the truck, and I'm like, "All right, I got a T-shirt. Like, how can I MacGyver this thing to get it on the road to just limp it to the next town, at least to get some water or something?" And out of nowhere, a couple cars again drive by, but crickets. It's dark out. Like every direction you look, I can see some blinking red lights off in the distance, but you can't tell how far they are away.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to look on the map to see where I am. Like, could I walk back to the last town? I'm like, that's an hour and it's 12 degrees, and I don't have that kind of winter gear. What the heck am I going to do? So I've sort of just like reserved, like, okay, I guess I'm going to get the back ready, put the seat down, figure out. I packed a sleeping bag. I was smart enough to pack my sleeping bag, but it's not a mountaineering, that cold of a sleeping bag. So it would have been a miserable night. But I was sort of reserved, like, okay, all the fluid that I have is either urine inside of my body to pee in the radiator, if I can hit the hole. And then I had, whatever I had in my tumbler, my glass from the restaurant. And out of nowhere, this lady pulls off on her driveway. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm okay, but my truck's not. It's it's overheated." She's like, "Well, let me call my husband. We live about 5 minutes away. Let's see what he's got to say." So she gets him on the phone. Meanwhile, she's got 4 kids in the back of her car. And it's dark in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And she pulls over to help me out. And I was just so grateful and so thankful. And so he's like, "Well, let me see what I got. I'll be there in about a half an hour. I'll get some stuff together, and we'll see if we can get you on the road to the next town at least." So he comes out. He rolls up in this beat up old farm truck. He gets out of his truck. He's got a gun on his hip. And I'm like, all right, well, he's protecting himself. I got nothing. That's cool. That's smart. And he's like, let's see, he brought a bunch of coolant out. We poured a bunch of coolant in, and he's like, all right, do me a favor, fire it up, and we'll see what we can see. And he's like, yep, your water pump took a dump. The water pump's just wobbling, and it's spewing fluid. And I'm like, well, great. I thought it was just a hose. If it was a hose, I could limp it down the road, but it's a water pump. I'm dead in the water. He's like, yep, unless you want to hand grenade your motor. I'm like, yep, well, okay. So he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I guess I'll just sleep here and wait for roadside assistance. Thanks so much for your help. He's like, I can't let you do that, dude. It's just, no. Let me call my wife and see if she's cool with you coming back to the house. I'm like, if anything, well, it's just, you tow it with your truck back to the house. How far is he? He's like, it's about 5 miles on dirt road. I'm like, well, okay. Maybe not that. I'm like, I could just sleep in it. He's like, no, why don't you just come in the house? So he calls his wife. I'm like, dude, listen, I don't think that I'm super comfortable with that. A, because you have kids. B, because I'm not going to sleep a wink tonight. I'm going to be flipping out about my truck and how to find a part and how to get it there and where the heck am I even anyway. Meanwhile, my brother's, looking online. He's like, yeah, we can get you one tomorrow. How far are you to Denver? And I'm like, that's like 8 hours behind me, dude. I can't, what am I going to do? So anyway, he's like, I'm like, no, let's just, he's like, you know what? I got an idea. Let me call my friend. She's got a little spot in town in Winona, Kansas. See if she'll answer the phone. She answers. She's like, hey, I got a guy here who needs a room for the night. He broke down on the road. And she's like, yeah, I got it. So does he have a credit card? Yeah. I read my credit card off over the thing. She's like, all right, here's your code to room number 2. He drove me all the way up to Winona, which was about 20 minutes from his house. Drove me up there. We buttoned up my Land Cruiser, and I slept the night in this little hotel. I canceled the room that I had. And, anyway, the next morning, it was cool. There was a little auto parts store right next door to the hotel. So I waited until they opened up. Meanwhile, I'm calling around any other auto parts and trying to get stuff shipped or whatever. And I'm looking at, maybe I got to get a trailer and a U-Haul or something to tow this truck out of here. And I'm going down all these rabbit holes. I walk over to the auto parts store. I'm like, do you have a water pump for an 88 Toyota FJ62 with 3FE? He's like, well, we can get it, but it's, close to the holidays and it will be about a week. And I'm like, I don't have a week. Okay, let's, reconvene here. And I'm like, well, if I got a water pump, would you guys be able to help me put it in? He's like, we don't work on Toyotas. And I'm like, okay, all right, that's the kind of town we're in, Toyota. That's how you say it. All right, that's cool. Shoot, what am I going to do? So anyway, Steve, the guy who picked me up the night before, and this is going to become a tale of two Steves, and I think this is why and how you and I got introduced, is another Steve. But this Steve calls me. He's like, hey, I found a water pump. I won't be here until tomorrow. It'll be up in Colby, Kansas. What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I guess I can figure out how to tow it to Colby. He's like, well, hold on. I'll be there in a little bit. I got to go up into town to see some people and to do some stuff and get some stuff for my tractor and this and that. I'll see you at the hotel. He's like, you hungry? And I'm like, well, I haven't eaten yet. I was waiting for the little cafe to open. He's like, don't eat. The cafe's good, but I got you covered. I'm like, okay. Meanwhile, I'm trying to find parts, and he shows up with a homemade breakfast burrito. And I chomp down the burrito, and he's like, all right, so what do you want to do? Do you want to take the old water pump out at my house? You're welcome to work on it in my barn. We can tow it down to my barn. And I'm like, I don't know. I was just going to rent a truck, and, you've already done so much for me, man. I can't put you out anymore. Like, you've got a life. You've got kids. Like, no. He's like, listen, I'm a Christian. This is what you do for people. You don't leave them stranded. You don't leave people. You help people. I'm like, well, thank you. I mean, again, I don't know how to thank you. Anyway, we find a part, and so I'm calling around seeing if there's anybody mechanic-wise who might be able to help me. And we found this diesel mechanic out of Colby, Kansas, who has like a mobile business. So when big trucks go down, he'd drive out and fix them. He's like, well, yeah, man, if you get your truck here, either I can come down and work on it. It'll be like, X amount of dollars for me to come down and work on it, or you can tow it up here. I'm like, well, I'll figure out how to get it up to you. And so Steve, he brings me back to his ranch, and I go and help him, feed the chickens, clean out the chicken coops, met his wife, met his kids finally in the daylight, and was talking to the kids, and takes me to this barn. He's got a sweet old barn find 67 maybe Camaro RS that used to be his dad's. And I'm like, wow, man, that thing is just sweet. I'm like, you want to trade a Land Cruiser for that? He's like, heck no, that used to be my dad's, and I have big hopes and dreams for that someday, and I'm going to fix it up. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it had, 3 inches of owl poop and all the stuff on it. It was just, oh, man. And it was roached. It was hammered. It was mouse eaten and whatever. But I digress, and I get sidetracked. Anyway, we do a bunch of chores around his land, and he's taking me on this road. He doesn't tell me anything. He's like, we got to go to the cattle thing, and I got to get the water tanker off the truck, go water the cattle, and we got to get the calcium bicarbonate into the water so it doesn't freeze, and the cows, it acts like Pepto-Bismol, if you will. And I'm just learning stuff left and right. And it's been a long time since I've been on a cattle ranch. And anyway, we get to talking, and we talked about just a little bit of everything. And he's like, he brings me out to this pasture, which is like 15 minutes away. And I'm sort of looking around, and I'm like, man, if this guy wanted to disappear me, it would be really easy. No one would ever find me. And I'm starting to get a little bit freaked out. And I don't get this vibe from this guy at all. But I'm just like, and I sort of said to him, I'm like, dude, I'm at your mercy here. You're taking me to a place that no one will ever find me. He's like, dude, if I wanted to disappear you, I got a backhoe there. I got, we just let the coyotes take care of you. If you were that kind of problem, you would be disappeared. And I'm like, okay, enough said. Anyways, like, do me a favor, unhook this trailer, do this, backs up to the gooseneck. He's got a flatbed trailer. What are we getting the flatbed for? We got to move the backhoe or something? He's like, no. We're going to take this, and we're going to load up your truck, and I'm going to take you to Colby. I got to run up to Colby today to go do some shopping. I figure if I'm driving up there, I'll take you with me, and la-di-da. So reload up my truck onto his trailer, and we take it to the guy's shop in Colby. We go to lunch at a little Chinese buffet, and then we go over to Walmart, and I'm like, dude, it's your lucky day. You ever heard of that show, the supermarket sweepstakes? This is whatever you can put in your cart.
Yeah.
I'm buying. Whatever you need for your house, for your family, whatever it is, I'm buying. Just throw it in there. Like, you need this, you want that, you want to, how about a radio? Well, just put it in there, dude. Fill it up. I'm forever at your mercy, and thankful to have met you and your wife, and to meet kind, compassionate people. It sort of renewed my faith in humanity, and this is not a Land Cruiser guy. And so he's like, no, I just need a couple regular old supplies, this, and this. And I'm not an overly religious man. I'm not a superstitious man. But I believe in everything sort of works out for a reason, and you're put into situations and places and people come into your life for reasons I can't explain. It could be God, I don't know. But he was that. And so I'll never forget it. And again, it's like numerology. I'm not a big numbers guy, whatever, but numbers always come up in my life. It could be times, it could be dates, it could be whatever. We go to the checkout, and it was $66.06. I'm like, well, that's weird. I don't know if I like that or not. That's like he's like, no, that's a good, like, pagan number. That's not necessarily the number of the devil. And he explains all these things. I'm like, all right, well, whatever. Anyway, I stayed the night in the hotel. Next morning, the part arrives. I go walk over to the O'Reilly Auto Parts, pick it up, walk down to the shop, and the guy was cool enough to help me work on my truck, but he was working on a diesel, so he was cool with me using his tools. I paid him for shop time and paid him for his time. After about 8 hours, I changed the water pump. I bought a thermostat, but they didn't give me the right gasket, so I didn't change the thermostat. I bought a couple of hoses and some belts, and I'm like, all right, let's send it. Put fluid back in it, and drove it around the block, and it was working fine. I'm like, all right, I got to get going. I got to get to the hotel. So off I drive, across the country, get it home. Finally got it home. and I guess I'm trying to wrap up this and make it the tale of two Steves. But I bought this truck, and it's a weird juxtaposition because in my surfing life, and I wouldn't say career because I was never a pro, but in my surfing life, I bought a boat so I could specifically go and surf spots that were uncrowded, because crowds in surfing can be dangerous and not to mention annoying. But I also bought the Land Cruiser to get it to places where most people don't get to.
Yeah.
And I can go out and camp in the wilderness like I used to with John Kerr. And I have a 12-year-old son, and I was trying to sort of, recreate what it was I was doing in California for him in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, I left everything familiar behind to live in Pennsylvania, and I stay here for him. If he wasn't here, I probably wouldn't be here. Now, Pennsylvania's become home, and I like it here. But one of the first trips we did after I owned it and got back to work and figured out how to pay for it was my son's spring break. Yeah, at that point, it was spring break, and it was going to be sort of a shakedown run. It was his spring break, and it was, he happened to be with me that year, and so I was like, hey, let's go check out, the dark sky country up north in Allegheny Forest up in Pennsylvania and go explore some northern stuff. And so, my son was my co-pilot, and and it was really cool. He didn't, I don't know quite know what he was thinking about the truck, but we packed it full of, gear and ice chests and camping gear and stuff and kayak, and off we went. And spring break in Pennsylvania is not like California or Florida spring break. It's not really nice. It's usually spitting rain and gray and funky, but it was cool because there was nobody out, and I was like, this is awesome. He picked a campground on the map during the itinerary, and he navigated us there, and we got the most sweet campsite right next to the lake. And it was like the one that everybody would covet if it was the middle of the summer.
Oh yeah.
But we had the campground to ourselves, and then we went and explored around Elk County, and just saw some sights, and just put some miles on her after I hadn't really been driving her across country. And then his summer break was coming up, and I've been doing like hurricane strike missions from Pennsylvania to the East Coast. One year I went during COVID when it was all shut down out to Assateague Island. And I was the only one who camped on the beach because the beach was closed. And I woke up to wild ponies on the beach and surfed in Maryland and Virginia and in Delaware. And then another trip I took, not in the Land Cruiser, but took to New Jersey. And so I was really I really wanted to go to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I'd been wanting to go there forever. And I was like, all right, well, how do I do this? I got to get better tires if I'm going to take this thing in the sand. The last time I drove in the dunes was in Pismo Beach in my 20s in somebody else's nicer four-wheel drive than I own. Like, how capable is this thing in the dunes? And so I bought 33 Mickey Thompson mud terrain, 10 and a half 15s, threw it on there. And on Facebook, there's this guy, Steve Duncan, Tale of Two Steves. And he was advertising and talking about the Toyota Beach Bash, the Carolina Beach Bash. And I'm like, what's this? Well, that would be cool. I own a Toyota, and that would be cool. At least if I drive it in the sand and get buried or something, at least we've got some decent four-wheel drive guys that are Toyota guys that can help me out. Cool. This will be great. We'll do that. We'll do, one night of Toyota Beach Bash, and then we'll maybe go down and cover the Outer Banks. And anyway, somehow, some way, I called Steve. I think he might have posted something about, hey, we're going to meet up at this rest. I called Steve like, hey man, I'm thinking about coming down. I got this, 88 FG62. I'm, just I'm taking my son. Where do I stay down there? Where do I stay? Is there a campground? What's the options? He's like, oh yeah, but it kind of fills up quick. And he was talking me through the Outer Banks and how to get a ferry and all this stuff. And he's like, well, let me ask my wife. Maybe you and Wolf can come and stay with us at our house. And I'm like, what? No, I mean, no, I don't need, that's fine. Whatever, we're good. So anyway, turns out I got a hotel room the night before. I wanted to break up the drive. It's a long drive from Pittsburgh to Carolina Beach or whatever, the Cure Beach or whatever it is. And we stayed the night outside of Manassas somewhere, and it rained just cats and dogs. It was like the first heavy rainstorm that I had my truck in since I bought it. And it was starting to rain inside of the cab because I guess the weather seal is dried out from too many years of sitting at altitude in Colorado. And then I'd already just replaced the wiper blades, and one of the wiper blades during the crazy thunderstorm like flew off on the freeway. And I stopped real quick and backed up. I backed up to the side and found the wiper blade. I'm like, sweet. And just as I was going to get out of the car, a car drove over the wiper blade. I'm like, shoot. So I get out in the pouring rain. I swap the wiper blades from the passenger side. And our next stop after waking up in the morning was to get breakfast and then, get on the road. And now I had to go to the auto parts store. I put a wiper blade on it and then the truck dies. It wouldn't start. So I jumped. This was at the restaurant, and I'm like, shoot, what the heck? Why didn't the damn thing start? So I jump pack it. We get it. So I jump it. It's fine. We get on the road. Crazy thunderstorm. Lose the wiper blade. Got breakfast. The truck wouldn't start. So I jump it. We go to the auto parts store. They check it. They're like, yeah, I think your alternator's going bad. Your battery seems fine. I'm like, okay. And that's what my jump pack tested it, and it seemed like it was okay. So I'm like, well, you know what? I'll just get a battery. What the heck? Just get a battery, throw it in, and I had ordered a stainless steel battery tray, and I replaced the battery tray a while back. That was like one of the first things I did because when I was taking apart the truck to put the water pump in, the battery tray crumbled. And I'm like, well, okay, cool. There's a stainless steel option. That's great. There's the cool thing about Land Cruisers and old Land Cruisers is, for the most part, I'm not having to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of cruiser heads out there that have come up with solutions, and I'm the type of guy that wants to support small businesses and improve upon this truck. It's almost 40 years old now, and it's not like I have the budget to make it a FJ 142, but I want to modernize it a little bit, and I want to improve upon some of the 40-year-old tech. Anywho, but I called Steve at one point. He's like, yeah, there's Iron Pig over there near where you are. Go over to them and have them check it out. I'm like, okay. So I go over to them, and they're like, yeah, your alternator seems fine. I'm like, well, that's good, and I'm glad that I changed the battery. I'm like, hey, well, while I'm here, do you mind? I ordered the wrong side of the battery tray. Could you just bend this thing for me? Like this, in my engineer head, and I'm not an engineer. I'm like, you should just be able to bend this, do this, and it'll hold the battery better. And they're like, yeah, I mean, they do that. Boom, they did it. I'm like, all right, so what do I owe you? They're like, free of charge. Get on the road, go have a fun time with your son. And I'm like, no, man, you guys have taken time out of your day. You're a Land Cruiser shop. Like, I owe you money. Nope, go have fun at the beach. Come back when and tell us how it was, and if you have some more business you need from us, you got to I'm like, you got a customer for life now. So Iron Pig Off Road, anybody needs a decent shop, they're really cool guys. And I was like a kid in the candy store in their parking lot, seeing all these FJ60s and FJ40s, and I'm like, ooh. Anyway, so Steve, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have found off Iron Pig. I ended up going down and staying at his house, and then we caravanned the next day down to Carolina Beach, and then we camped together that night. And he just turned out to be a really cool guy. And if it wasn't for his kindness and his help, helping me get on the road, and getting down there safely, and another guy, Steve, in Kansas. I mean, who knows where I would have been without Steve's. But again, it's like names. The kid mechanic that I have working on my truck with me in my garage, is named Tom. And the guy I bought the truck from was Tom. And the guy that I almost bought the Lexus from was Tom. And so it's like the universe is saying, like, you are right. You need to meet these people.
Yeah.
And one of these people are going to change your life. Well, it turns out they all have. They have all impacted my life. And they've made me go from sort of a curmudgeon who stuck by himself and was good solo to seeing the beauty in community and helping people. And so, one day I was driving Uber and I see this car broken down in the middle of an intersection. And I'm like, all right, I should be earning money right now, but I can't just drive past this person because they're in a dangerous, precarious position.
Yeah.
So I stop, I put the flashes on, and I'm like, put it in neutral, and I push it out of the road. And then I get my car to safety, and then I'm looking under her car. I'm like, yeah, it looks like, you need something. And I don't remember what it was. Meanwhile, her dad shows up. He's like, thank you so much for helping my daughter. There's not many people like you. I'm like, well, when it wasn't for Steve, I probably wouldn't have helped her. I probably would have just driven on by. And so, man, this truck, it's become a new obsession, a new hobby, a new point of fun. I can't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'll be driving with my kid and I'll see random people pointing at it and, taking pictures out their window. And then I was at soccer practice with my son and his little buddy, Billy's like, man, that thing's cool. What is that thing? And I'm like, it's a Land Cruiser. He's like, I like it. I want one. I'm like, right on, and then so I picked up my son's friend to take him to the movies or something, him and them to the movies. And his buddy gets in the back and he's like looking around. He's like, this thing's got a cool vibe in here. And I'm just like, this is hilarious. Like, who knew this analog 80s funky cruiser would get so much attention I get stopped everywhere. And, I registered it as an antique so that I wouldn't have to get it smogged and have to register it all the time. And people are always like, what year is that? And oh, I remember this, and and it's so, and it's turned into this weird thing. Like I saw there, I was driving, doing some errands in a town where when I first moved to Pittsburgh, Lawrenceville, I was driving through Lawrenceville to do some errands, and I look over at this old Texas auto shop. This guy's like wholesales cars, and I see an FJ60, root beer brown, got
Nice.
a white roof, and I'm like, what the heck? And so I pull around. I don't even think I was driving my 60. No, I wasn't. I was driving my Subaru. I pull around, I stalk in, and I find two guys talking in the back of the lot. I'm like, I don't mean to interrupt, and I'm sorry if this is weird, but is that your 60 out front? He's like, yeah, it's mine. And he's got a little bit of an accent. I'm like, where are you from? He's like, West Virginia. I'm like, how long have you owned it? He's like, oh, about 5 years now. I bought it from some guy, la da 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 da. And it's got Old Man Mimu. It's got the Holly Sniper in it. Anyways, well, dude, if you ever want to go wheeling or something, take my number. And so we do. And fast forward a couple months, and I see it at the grocery store parked. And so I park my 62 right next to his. I'm like, dude, I just parked next to your truck. Meet me outside. I see your dog in the car. He's like, all right. And we get to talking and we're yapping. It was like cars and the coffee unprompted in the grocery store parking lot. And I'm like, dude, follow me to my house. Let's talk. Let's continue the conversation. I got to take my son to do this. So he does. And so we're talking, and he's like, I've never driven a 62. And I'm like, dude, it's been a long time since I've driven a 60. You mind drive if I drove your 60? He's like, mind if I drive your 62? And I'm like, sure, let's do it. So we swapped and we drove a little loop around near where I live. And it was like, all right, your 60s, it needs a little carburetor work and the sniper needs to be dialed in. You got a little backfiring issue. And so we kind of wrenched on it and tried to figure out some stuff. And I haven't seen that guy in a while, but that's sort of the weirdo that I've turned into, the stalker weird. I'm not a stalker, but when it's a cruiser,
Hey,
it's sort of like people come out of the woodwork and meet up and want to talk and want to, chat. And now I know there's like 4 other ones in Pittsburgh that I found.
So I will say this for cruiser heads. Once you get a cruiser, you become that stalker guy. I'm that stalker guy. Strange story. I mentioned that I'm not at my house right now. I'm not even in my recording studio. I'm in San Diego on a family vacation. Um, and yes, I record these podcasts while I'm on vacation. I just happened to bring the latest issue of Toyota Trails. And
Nice.
Steve number 2, who helped you get to Iron Pig off road, wrote about his side of your story. And I'm like looking at it, I'm like, Jonah, I wonder if that's the Jonah I'm talking to today. And then come to find out, it's the same story on different perspectives. And I just read it literally right before I
Oh,
got
too
on the
cool. So
podcast.
Steve called me. He's like, dude, I didn't tell you, but I wrote about this and I submitted it to Toyota Trails, and it's going to be in the issue. And you gotta talk to Dan. And I'm like, well, okay. And so I wrote up this whole thing. I don't know. There's a guy online that I follow on Bring a Trailer who will chime in every once in a while and write these hilarious write-ups
Yeah.
and these like little short stories about cars in his small town in Texas. I can't think of the guy's name, blogger. And they're hilarious. Anyway, I started to write one and posted it on Steve's Facebook thing, and I'm like, I gotta write my side of it. And so I guess I got through telling you, and it's not nearly as colorful. I don't know. I guess we'll have to listen, but it's not nearly as colorful as I have written out at home. I'm starting to write a short story about my cruiserness, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'm just a nobody, man. Like I don't think your listeners are gonna learn anything from me about Land Cruisers.
You know
Because
what?
I'm all over the place with mine. I'm like, part of me wants to go down every rabbit hole and put the badass bumpers on, and the terrain chamber suspension, and I'm looking at, are there headers available for a Land Cruiser and 3FE? And if the more and more forums I go down on I Hate Mud, um, headers aren't the way. And I just have the next thing I got to do now is, now that I've owned it in Pennsylvania and drove it to go snowboarding a few times, the freaking salt they use here in Pennsylvania has rusted the muffler through.
Yeah.
And so I looked in the old booklet from the old owner, and it's been about 16 years since the muffler's been done on this thing. So I guess the old muffler lasted about 22 years. It's been 16 years, and now it's my job to put a new muffler on this thing. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to get exhaust, I want to get a full, manifold back stainless exhaust. And then I start thinking, I'm like, well, that's about, who knows how much that's going to cost. And I'm like, what's the realistic gain? The exhaust is going to outlast the truck. And then I think to myself, sort of the old hot rod roots of my uncle. I'm like, man, it'd be really sweet to put an LS under this thing and, double the horsepower and get better gas mileage. Because running it with 33s, I'm getting about 10 miles per gallon. But it looks good. um,
You, you know, I,
and
I
I mean, I
always,
just go to, and I'm like, well, so I've been slowly just kind of going through this thing and changed all the fluids. The next thing I want to do is upgrade the brakes, to get a little bit bigger, better pistons brakes. And I got 80 series, brake booster and master, and I got Forerunner pads and rotors and new hoses. And I was like, well, what about rear disc brakes? And George Esther is like, what are you gonna do about a handbrake then? I'm like, oh, well, okay, there's that. And I'm like, well, what about coil suspension? He's like, how much money do you have? And so I don't. That's the problem. Is I'm like, semi-retired but not independently wealthy. And I'm not even semi-retired. I'm just sort of, um, I don't know, how do I put this? Part-time employed, self-employed, but not employed enough. So independently poor as well. And the Land Cruiser is gonna bankrupt me. But I guess, in a pinch, I guess I could go live in it, and that's kind of the plan with this truck. And that's one of the reasons why I got it. Is
yeah.
I got about 6 years with my son until he graduates high school and does whatever he wants to do. I want to make some memories in it while I have them. I'm probably not going to give him this truck to drive when he's 16. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't drive it, but it's not going to be his daily. It'll be mine. But that's been the problem with this truck, and I haven't done as much as I'd like to because I share custody with him and his mom. And so I have about 4 to 5 days at a time, especially now that my other car was totaled. I got 4 to 5 days at a time to put this truck down and take it apart and fix it. And I'm not a good enough. If the job says it takes 8 hours, it takes me 16. If a job says it takes 12 hours, it takes me 30. I'm, with my limited tools, my limited space and time and mechanic skills, I just haven't gotten everything done that I want. And so I've had my buddy Tom helping me. And he's cool. He works for pizza and beer and, a little bit of side money. And he, he's got a little bit more know-how than I do. And he's got an old Cadillac that I help him wrench on. And, but yeah, I need to get another car so that I can work on it. So I'm like, well, do I get another Land Cruiser? That's what I should do, right? I should get an 80 series that's running.
You always get another Land Cruiser.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh man. So yeah, but yes and no. It's like I need some sort of little get around, 40 mile to the gallon little car that's going to be the parts runner for the Land Cruiser, really.
Yeah. I made the mistake when my Land Cruiser went down, and I'm actually going to be picking it up in about a week or so. I picked the exact wrong time to buy a full-size Tundra with a long bed V8, and so now it's like I'm getting better gas mileage, but I'm spending 4 times as much on gas.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I miss my Subaru with the little crappy transmission as it was, but the thing got 20 some odd miles per the gallon, and driving the Land Cruiser has been a hit to my pocketbook.
Yeah. Well,
but I guess that, if worse comes to worse, you can put the 5.7 in your Land Cruiser.
I am thinking about that because I did buy that truck knowing that 5.7 is a 1,000,000-mile motor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if this next 2F goes bad, screw it. I'm gonna junk the truck, get a smaller truck, or even just go back to a commuter car. Put the 5.7 in the Land Cruiser, and
Nice.
So, Jonah, we are actually well over an hour. Didn't seem like an hour, but we're over.
I could talk forever, especially about Land Cruisers, and I didn't even get a chance to hear your story. Although I guess I have heard some of them on your podcast.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for doing this and sort of bringing cruiser people together. Again, I'm not a guy that, like, I don't know, promotes products or promotes businesses. I'm not on a huge social media presence. So what you do is cool to me. And, you're seemingly, I don't want to age you or date you, but around my age. I'm 50. I was born in 76. I live at a house with the house number 76, which was weird. I just recently joined TLCA and have a magazine, Toyota Trails, sitting on my coffee table, loaned to me from Steve from North Carolina. And they, I guess, are celebrating their 50th anniversary. So just things, like I said, things sort of happen. But no, man, hats off to you. Thank you for this and this opportunity. And, there's, I'm sure, a lot of places and businesses and people that I have been thankful to cross paths with now that I've owned this Land Cruiser, to help me upgrade it. And, I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy who's on YouTube and, pumping videos and getting paid for that. But, I watch them and I learn from them and I'm grateful for them. And I Hate Mud and all these guys. And, for me, it was old John Kerr. If anybody remembers him, he used to make wine called Cambodian Red. Kerr wines. If you can find those, if they're still available, they're dynamite if you're a wine drinker.
Yeah.
If you like a good full-bodied Syrah, Cambodian Red is dynamite. But I'm not in the business of selling wine, and he's a dead guy, so I can promote his stuff. And he was one of those guys that touched me and got me into Land Cruisers. And man, just sitting around fires and talking story. That's what it's all about for me.
Yeah.
And that's what this podcast is about. You mentioned people probably didn't learn a lot about Land Cruisers or how to work on Land Cruisers. This isn't a technical podcast. Sometimes it gets technical, but you know what? I absolutely love hearing the stories behind I love hearing the stories behind the vehicles themselves. I mean, just that story that you shared and all the serendipitous moments that happened along the way, and then to get your son out to Carolina Beach Bash and
I'll never forget one of the best things about that trip was, and it had been, I don't know how long it had been since I'd surfed. But we got to the beach bash, we set up, we got, the trucks are there. I'm stoked. And I got my son all lubed up in sunscreen. We run down to the water. I got my surfboard. I tried to get him on a surfboard. He wasn't really feeling it. And I started him surfing in Hawaii at age 8. Anyway, I paddle out and I'm watching him sort of body surf, and I'm just enjoying. I'm looking back and looking at all the Toyotas and just like, we made it. This is awesome. And it was a flat day. It was like knee high. It was nothing day. And out of nowhere, a little, I don't know, waist high, belly high wave out of nowhere comes. I'm just sitting there bobbing in the lineup. I gave like 3 paddles, pop up. I go down the line right in front of my son. We lock eyes and he's like, yeah, dada. And I do a little turn and then I fall and I'm like, that's it. I'm good. I've arrived. I've surfed. I'm going to go sit on the beach. If I was drinking, I'd go have a beer. That was it. I'll never forget it. Just locking eyes with my kid and him seeing me surf. And so I'm looking forward to this year, going back down to Carolina Beach. What is it? June 27th, I think we're going down. So if anybody wants to join and head down to Cure Beach in Carolina to go to the beach bash, we'll be down there, and love to talk story and learn about your Land Cruiser or your Toyota, or I don't know, be there to go have some fun, catch a wave, and talk story around a campfire later on.
Yeah.
And I hope to see you somewhere around the world. You mentioned you're from Idaho. I'm going to Idaho in July to visit my brother.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna go.
I'm going up next month, and we're driving up, and I've already warned my kids. I'm like, we are stopping in Salt Lake, and we are going to see the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum. And they're like, okay. I'm like, you get no choice about it. This is happening. And so my son will probably be a little bit more excited than my youngest daughter, but I'm driving and they're not, and this is something I want to do.
When I was looking at flights, one of them went through Salt Lake, and I'm like, oh, maybe I could stop and go to the Land Cruiser Museum with my kid on the way to Idaho. I'm like, maybe we'll just take a day and screw around in Salt Lake City and, make it a Anthony Bourdain style layover, and eat some food and teach him about the Mormon religion and and go see the Land Cruiser Museum.
Yeah.
Anywho, I digress, dude. As I said, I could talk forever. Dan, I do hope to see you. I don't know, around a campfire in a mountain, somewhere, at some point. Meet you for real in real life.
Yeah, it'll
but
be.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's been an honor and a privilege just to meet you and to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, Jonah, thank you for coming on, and we'll have to have you on again some other time.
I hope to make some more adventures in this thing, and hopefully they don't involve, the kindness of strangers because I've broken down and needed it. It'll be, I don't know, something else. But anywho, all right, Dan, take care. Thanks again.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Classic Land Cruisers podcast.
As always, remember to go to reefmonkey.com to get your Classic Land Cruiser podcast merch. Bring your adventure home with inlowgear.com, your source for custom Land Cruiser apparel and merchandise, where adventure becomes art, designed for the road. Again, this episode was brought to you in part by Redline Land Cruisers, Save Your F, by Manafree, your one-stop shop for Land Cruiser parts and service, by Valley Hybrids and Terrain Tamer North America. As for me, the mountains are calling and I must go.